Last week, you met Anna, whose powerful story showed us what it looks like to walk away from other people's expectations and choose joy anyway. We explored how cultural pressure and the myth of linear success can box women in, and how courage sometimes looks like saying no to a perfectly good job to build a life on your own terms. This week, we stay in that spirit, but shift into the physical world. We're talking about external barriers that are literally built into the system, from the gloves that are too big to the pants that don't have pockets. So, I'm introducing you to Amy Roosa, a risk control expert and founder of the Safety Rack, a nonprofit fighting for properly fitting personal protective equipment, or PPE, for women in male-populated fields, like construction, manufacturing, and even the military. You'll hear how a near miss turned into Amy's mission. You'll learn why 84% of women struggle with ill-fitting personal protective equipment, how lack of fit leads to injury, lost confidence, and lost careers, and what it really means when companies say, well, we just don't see the demand. We're in Season 2, Part 2 of UnCeiling You, where we're looking at external barriers and challenging the systems that still expect women to shrink to fit. So hit play, and let's talk about what safety, equity, and real advocacy look like when women stop accepting a bad fit.
You and I both work full-time. We have our full-time jobs, and we also have our passion projects. And every movement starts with a moment, something that causes a person to shift and start to act. And I want to know, what was your turning point? What made you realize that women's safety in the workplace, especially when it comes to access to properly fitting PPE, was an issue that you had to do something about?
I had co-founded the Midwest Women in Safety Conference back in 2018. And the first year that we had the conference, there was an entire discussion on women's personal protective equipment, PPE. And the gentleman that was leading the discussion, who was a distributor at the time, still is, he kept just talking about the men's PPE. And there's this room of 60 women collectively all tilting their heads and raising their hands and being like, but where's our PPE? Why is it here almost by 2020, we still are having a discussion of where our PPE is? And as a safety professional, we're tasked with protecting women in the workplace. And I just had that aha moment. I'm like, hey, where is our PPE? And so I just started trying to uncover it and finding the vendors that were doing it. And I knew it was a larger problem, and I knew I could use my platform for it. I just didn't know my platform was going to expand to what it is today back in 2018. That, if you would have had a conversation with 2018, Amy, I would have laughed at you.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is that when I think of PPE, I'm thinking of construction workers and how many women construction workers out there. So let's just break this down for the listeners. You explained what PPE is, but what is so crucial about the fit being right, and why is it especially crucial for women? How many women are actually impacted?
So really, when I look at this, I look at PPE at the end of the day as personal protection equipment against you and the hazard. In safety, we look at how we control the employee's exposure to a hazard through the hierarchy of controls. So this is administrative procedures, training, engineering, and substituting out things so that the person is never exposed to the potential for an injury. PPE on that hierarchy of needs is the very last item, which means we know if we're getting to PPE, we are exposing the end user to the hazard. When it comes to women in the workplace, you have to go back in history and look at when this stuff was being designed and how it was being designed. And primarily, it was being designed for men who were the most dominated in these industries. But if we take what we know from there to now, not just in construction, but in manufacturing and all these other little niche industries, we have about 8 million women in the workforce who are affected by this. So 8 million women that potentially need some type of personal protective equipment. In construction, I think it's 11% of the industry is women. That equates to a couple of million right there. But historically, the manufacturers and the distributors just see that small percentage and not the actual number that it represents.
Right.
And because of that, I don't think we're connecting the dots that this is a bigger equity gap in the workplace than it should be.
Can you maybe relate a story to where the PPE wasn't fitting properly and it caused harm?
I know for myself, and this was just even when I had the aha moment back in 2018, prior to that, my safety vests were unisex or men's sizes, and they would just hang off my body. And so I could catch on a door handle very easily, which was always annoying. But for women out there, I've met women in my discussions that have lost the tip of their finger because their glove fabric was so large, it grabbed and pulled them into a machine.
Wow.
Yeah. So there are potentials for injuries out there, but there's also a lot of near misses happening. So injuries that are, things happen that almost result in an injury. Somebody has work boots that are designed for men because they couldn't find a women's work boot, and they trip because it's so large and it's so extra heavy that it's weighing them down when they're walking. Or men's work pants instead of women's work pants that fold under that shoe and now become an additional trip hazard. So each way that we look at this, there's different ways that things are a hazard. Even respiratory protection is still not designed for the smaller frame face of a woman to where you're going to have gaps in that being a proper seal, which means you're being exposed to whatever you're trying to keep out of your face and out of your respiratory tract. So it's very concerning. And the more I was exploring this, the more I was having conversations about this is where we've led to the Safety Rack now being the nonprofit it is, because we still don't have the data. And in order to change anything, including standards or manufacturer designs, we need more data.
What kind of data are you looking for? I saw on your resources page that you have a 2024 Equity in Safety report out there. What data do you have now, and what are you looking for the future to help make a difference?
Yeah, the data. So we did a survey last year. 505 women globally participated, and it was about their limited access to PPE. So it's a really great report to read. But we need the data on, the respiratory and face sizes, hand sizes, body differences between men and women. There's some out there, but it's very limited. And there are a lot of good researchers out there right now that want to do more, but they can't get the funding for it. And that's where I want to fill that gap so that we have that data coming in so that the standard bodies that rewrite the ANSI standards can actually have the data to do it right. So that the design manufacturers who redesign the specs of protective gear or just workwear have that data too. I'd love just to do a study, and I know this sounds ridiculous, on the need for pockets, because as women, we don't have pockets. And somebody made the argument one day, they were like, well, you don't need a ridiculous amount of pockets. I'm like, yeah, but go look at a man's pants on a job site versus a woman. He can carry stuff in his pants. A woman can't. If she's carrying that in her hands, she can easily trip and wouldn't be able to brace herself. It's an extra hazard on the job that's not necessary.
Wait, just back up a second. So you're telling me that men's pants have pockets and women's don't?
If you go, I've been on chats where we've gone to town on this with women in trades. If you look at the difference in a woman on a construction site's pants to a man's, you're going to find more women that just have like the 2 front pockets and the 2 back pockets because their pants are designed for women and it fits them. There's only a few brands on the market right now, and a lot of them are led by female founders that have pockets. So Dovetail Workwear came out years ago. They were one of the few in the industry looking to close this equity gap. She designs her pants based off of the feedback of the end user. So she can have a pair of pants that has 9 pockets to 12 pockets, but they're very industry specific. And it's really neat how she's designed this. And I've had conversations with people being like, I just think that's highly unnecessary. And I'm like, I could use 12 pockets very easily because then I'd be very happy. But if you have, let's say, the standard number of pockets is 6 on a man's pair of pants, he can throw his wallet in there. He can throw screws in there. He can throw wrenches or hang off a hammer. But if a woman can't do the same, it's not going to be as equal on the job site to how the workflow is, right? It's going to put her at risk if she is walking and having to carry extra stuff. So it's just creating this equity within the workwear and PPE space.
So who's the person, like in general, who would be arguing, well, you don't need any more pockets? Like, I don't get it. Why would you even have to weigh in on this?
I think the more people get educated, the more they're willing to respond to it. And I do encounter people that they have already had this preconceived notion. They've already made up their mind to the argument and they don't want it changed. And to that, I always say, you're not my target audience then. I'm not going to sit here and have this conversation with you when I've had employers, and this is a good example. I've recently consulted with a propane company, and as I was educating their procurement department, we started talking about FR, flame-resistant bras. And one of the gentlemen, he chimed in and he goes, I would have never thought about that. And I go, well, of course you wouldn't. You don't have to wear one. So, but once we created that awareness, they were all about, okay, what are the brands? How do we get this in? Mm-hmm. How do we even have the conversation with the female workers so that they're not offended? And we worked through all that. But I think for a lot of the, like, especially the men in the industry that I'm encountering, the moment you start kind of talking about this, they have their aha moment. And now we're starting to see a little bit more of the ripple effect of change now.
Congratulations. I love it that you're having those conversations.
Yeah, they've been great conversations. Have the few ones there here and there where they're like, it doesn't matter. And I'm like, well, then move on. I'm not going to talk to you about it.
I can't convince you.
I'm not going to try to convince you all day when I have other people that need my help.
So when we're talking about those folks that are not willing to listen, that their minds are made up already, how does that ripple effect in the negative, because they're not open, impact the workplace that they're in and the women in that workplace?
I think you have to realize that they're going to be put at a higher risk. They're intentionally putting their female workforce at a higher risk. And I let them know that. I hope that they see what I'm doing online. And I hope that I can help empower their female workforce to start nudging the conversation on their end. But when you deal with maybe a decision maker that's like that, it really hopes to find the one person in the organization that has their ear and can be that advocate for change.
That's nice. So in your mind, how does the filling that PPE gap reflect on a larger equity issues for women, especially when they're facing a male-dominated field like construction or even mining?
Yeah. So I look at, like, how can this have a positive ROI, return on investment, not just to the employer, but the female. From the female standpoint, if I have everything I need on day one, when I come in, it looks and it's designed for women, I can wear it and I'm not swimming in it. I'm more confident. I feel valued by my employer. I'm not going to be distracted by my workwear on the job site because it's pulling in one direction or I'm tripping. I'm not going to have to be worried that men are going to make a comment that, oh, it looks like I put on my dad's uniform today.
Yeah.
So all those things start to go away, along with the potential for a reduction in injuries and accidents. For the employer, that ripple effects is kind of the same way. You can have that potential reduction in injury and accidents because you're not going to have to worry about the PPE being a part of that risk. And then you also get the retention of the employee. If the employee feels valued, they're not going to leave your company, hopefully. I'm sure there's a lot of other issues in that domino chain for women that could affect them to leave. But if they feel seen and they feel heard and they feel valued, they're more likely to stay. And your reputation as an employer increases for creating an inclusive, safe workplace. And I think in today's workforce, where we're seeing this huge turnover rate, and when we're seeing this larger population of the workforce retiring and seeing some high turnover rates in certain industries of construction, I think there's value in making sure that the female workforce you're bringing in to help keep up with the demand has these things in place. It's not too much to ask for. These are simple solutions to make them feel valued, to protect them on the job site, and it just isn't happening. And the data's been out there. We've known this is a problem. And it's not like females are new to the workforce. I know people like to say male dominated, but to me, it's male populated because women have always been in these workforces. So we need to just change the mindset switch, and we need to change the language we're using a bit.
So, and you covered this, but maybe you can go a little bit deeper. Awareness is the first step of act to create the change. But what are some other tangible steps employers today can take to ensure their female workers are protected going forward?
Definitely listen to your female workforce, get their feedback, get their buy-in. Don't just assume that you can go to distributor or manufacturer's website and pick something out and it's going to work. But also make sure we're reevaluating this, right? Like with any good PPE program, any good risk assessments that you're doing for those programs, they need to be reevaluated annually or biannually, whatever that frequency piece is, so that you understand that. It's not just a one and done where you can be like, oops, here's your PPE. I resolved an issue. Feel good about yourselves. Bye. This is actionable things that we have to be proactive on continuously.
And I'm sure if they consult with you, the employers, you'll make it easy for them. Now, earlier you said that you want to make it easier for the employees or the women to speak up. How can women speak up about their PPE needs in an environment where they might not feel like, or they might feel like they're the only one?
I think that's a good question. And to that, if they don't feel it, fine, like they don't feel like they can speak up, find the ally within your organization who you have a good relationship with and start educating them on that. Go download the equity report from the safety website, find other reports out there. There's some good reports and resources out there, but start having that conversation and ask them either for guidance on how you approach the boss that needs to make that decision, or see if they're willing to approach the boss to make that decision.
I like it. So one of the things that we started talking about before we actually started this interview is how fortunate you have a day job. I also have a day job, and your employer supports you on this passion project. Can you talk a little bit about the type of support you get and how did you gain that support?
For the work in risk control now. And for me, when I interviewed for this job, I let them know that I was starting the safety rack and that I knew that there would be times where I'm going to have to take extra days off of work to, like travel this weekend. I go to California for a couple of days, or that, I'm going to have hard stops at 4 p.m. so that I can do podcasts like what we're doing right now. And they were amazing about it. They've been very supportive. I've even presented internally on the subject, and I've been leveraged by others in my organization to go talk on it. So they're very proactive. They see the value in it, and it feels good at the end of the day. Because prior to that, I did have an employer who was like, nope, you're not going to have time. And then they were like, well, what are you going to be posting on social media? And I'm like, I mean, if this subject's going to bother you, we might have a problem here, because it's not a simple subject, but it's a simple conversation in terms of content, right? Like we're not getting into anything I think is offensive. We're just simply making an ask to the public. We're making education. We're bringing awareness to the subject. But my previous employer was not happy with it. And I was like, I'm still going to do it. I have to do it. It's what I've seen in the industry. And I think we need to keep having the conversation, and we are.
And the other thing that we were talking about is that, you contacted me. I had just published my book and you're like, hey, just want to meet you. And for me, you were one of the first people that I felt like was similar to me, in that we had this passion project in addition to our day job. And now I feel like I'm meeting so many people. Can you tell me from your own perspective, having this passion project, what did it bring to you? And what did it bring to maybe even your life and your day job? Like, did it add to it?
For sure, when I was starting to take this on, that it was going to be stressful. Initially, it was. Most people don't know that as I was starting the safety rack and building it out and having conversations, I was also caretaker for my grandparents who both passed in the time that we've gotten into a nonprofit. So I had a lot of this added stress. For me, taking this on, though, getting to see the end result of having these conversations and the impact it's having, it just fuels me even more. when I'm out on sites and I'm seeing the change, when I can be out on a construction site and I see a woman wearing a radiant safety vest, and I'm like, I know that vest. I know it fits her. I feel so proud to see that this is having an impact out there. Being able to work with employers who reach out to me is incredible too. But to your point, there are a lot of female-led organizations out there that are doing the side hustle too to make change, and being able to collaborate with them, being able to connect them has been so great. I love being a bridge to other organizations and other people that didn't know each other existed. It has been one of the funnest things I've been able to do. And any stress that I might have on a given day just kind of goes away when I look at all the neat things in my inbox if I'm having a bad day. You don't get to see it, but the wall in front of me has all these thank you cards from people too. And if I'm having that day, I just look up at it and I'm like, this is good.
Yeah. It's really great because I had pulled together a bunch of guests that I had on my podcast right after the first season was over. And one of the guests that I had was a previous coworker. And then the second guest was a senior vice president at a company who's also written a book and also put together all these things. And she was explaining that prior to writing her book and putting together these retreats, she was burned out at her job, but now that she's written a book and put together the retreats, she's no longer burned out. And the first friend's like, back up a second. How can you not be burned out? Like, you added on to your day job, the book and the retreats.
But it makes me happy.
There you go.
Like, if your hobby is to leave work and go run 20 miles, which I used to do, that's your hobby. It makes you happy. If it's to go home and cuddle up on the couch with your dog and it makes you happy, nobody would question it. Suddenly we go out and we're like, we're going to start a nonprofit. We're going to start a podcast. I'm going to write a book. Suddenly people are like, where are you finding the time? Aren't you exhausted? And I don't know if you've experienced this, and I've listened to a couple of your podcasts. I keep trying to catch up on like yours and like 10 others, but have you experienced the ripple effect of having to justify to your friends what you're doing, or even having to let relationships go? Because that was the one thing to protect my peace. I had to learn where to set the boundaries with some friends on this, and some I had to let go.
Yeah. There was one friendship I did have to let go because I felt like it was messing with my head. And I thought, I don't have enough time to wonder, what did they mean by that?
Yeah, right.
Because it was taking too much energy. So yes, I definitely been thinking in terms of boundaries, like, okay, what is worth my time and what isn't worth my time, for sure.
Yeah, I've had to learn that mostly because doing this, I was a part of other organizations too, because I wanted to help out. Yes, I'll do this. Yes, I'm willing to help out. I don't want to say no to people. But as I started navigating the safety rack, as I was taking care of my grandparents, and this is also during the end part of COVID, I realized, okay, if I'm going to go forward as a nonprofit, things are going to have to go and I have to end that. I don't have to walk away completely from the relationship, but I don't have to be as involved because my energy needs to be here now. And that was the moment I started doing that, and I put the processes in place to back away from a few organizations. I felt immensely better about everything. I felt more focused. I felt more driven. I felt the confidence to take on difficult conversations head on. And it's just been the best thing ever since.
I hope that, listening to us, listening to your passion, listening to the impact that you're making for other women, that you're seeing that there's actually other women who are thinking about women and producing the PPE that they need, helps the women who have this drive, this like, I have this thing in me that I really wanted to do, but I've sort of let day-to-day life take me over and I've kind of pushed that dream down. I hope that this conversation helps them bring that back to life.
I do too, because if you just give a little bit, like, I was stuck in my career. And it wasn't until 2013 when I divorced my husband. I'm not saying get a divorce to anybody listening to this, but I divorced my husband. I got a job out of the 10 years of retail that I was doing. And I really just started focusing on myself. And doing that started to make more of a spark in the things I wanted to do and be involved in. And I felt like I was contributing something to society at the end of the day. I didn't want to just go home and run and watch TV and that was all I was going to contribute. Like, I wanted something that would be meaningful. And the chance encounter with a group of women one day at a lunch meeting that I've never even met a day in my life. We were at a Mexican restaurant, we're having margaritas, we're eating chips, and I just talked to this lady. I'll give her a shout out, Dr. Selena Perlman. I was just telling her, I really want to do something for just women in safety. I want to get a group together. And she's like, do it, do a conference. And now I'm here talking to you. But that little spark, she kind of ignited that little spark. So if somebody's listening to this and it's igniting that little spark of curiosity that you can do something, don't stop that flame. Don't stop the spark. Just go and do it. You're going to thank yourself. There's no blueprint for this. There's no, I'm going to write it down and plan it out. Just do it. That's how everything has happened for me. I went and I talked to my co-founder, Barbara Ralston at Cookwood Community College, and we started the conference. I decided I wanted to do the safety rack. I just started it. There was no blueprint. I mean, I've read tons of books. You got them all behind me. I've read your book. All that helps inspire and guide me, but you just have to do it. That's the key there.
Little steps at a time. So as we come close to the end of the podcast, what are some of the other, things that are coming to your head that you want to let women know about? Whether it's safety, whether it's putting gas on that spark so it turns into a huge flame. What would you like to say?
I think we live in a society where everybody gets into our heads and we get into our own heads, and we need to not do that. Regardless of where you're at in your life, you are capable of succeeding at any stage, at any age. And I was doing this at 30, and I thought I was too old when I started really looking at doing something with my career, because I didn't want to be stuck in retail doing safety. I didn't want to be stuck at that salary and feel mediocre. I wanted to create change. So if you want to do it, own it and do your homework, hold yourself accountable to that, and don't let other people's perceptions of you get in the way of it.
Fantastic. Now, you have a website?
thesafetyrack.org. We officially launched as a nonprofit in January. We launched the website in March. We are actively getting our FIC status in. So once that happens, hopefully later this year, we will definitely be taking donations. We will be looking for partners and sponsors, and all of that is going to go towards the education, the research, and the advocacy work that we want to do at the Safety Rack to make an impact on women, not just in the trades, but women in military, women in fire, women in medical. This is not a problem that's just in one industry sector, but it is a problem that's going to need to have some funding behind it to do that research that we need. And so if you want to be a part of it, definitely follow me on the social media and stay up to date. And we will just keep moving at the pace that I can move at, which luckily for me, I have an amazing board of directors. So everything has just aligned at its own pace. I thought I was taking too much of my time, but I built this out and I'm really proud of it right now.
Fantastic. And so when that nonprofit designation comes in, you'll have to let me know so I can let everybody else know.
I will. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much for being on, for educating us on how we should be standing up for ourselves, for what you're doing, for the passion that you have. And I also thank you for just you being you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. So
you're welcome.
Yeah.
What a powerful reminder that exclusion isn't always loud. Sometimes it's built into the seams. Whether it's gloves that don't fit or pants without pockets, Amy Roosa showed us how something as basic as personal protective equipment designed without women in mind can have dangerous, even career-ending consequences. But Amy didn't just call it out. She built something in response. The Safety Rack isn't just a nonprofit. It's a movement. One that starts with data, centers women, and creates safer, more equitable workspaces from the ground up. Next week, we shift from the physical barrier of ill-fitting gear to a temporal one, the idea that careers should follow a perfect timeline. I sit down with Sheila Callahan, founder of the Age Equity Alliance, to unpack why ageism is one of the most accepted and costly biases in the workplace. If Amy exposed design bias, Sheila calls out career timeline bias. And together, their stories reveal just how much potential we're wasting when we expect women to shrink or step aside instead of design and lead. So here's your next move. Download this episode so you can revisit it anytime. And so the algorithm knows you want more like this. Share it with a friend, a manager, a mentor. Anyone who needs to hear why safety and inclusion must go hand in hand. And if it sparked something in you, tell someone. The ripple starts when we speak up. Until next time, keep unsealing yourself, and I'll see you in next week's episode.